In this tutorial, we will review the various features of the TouchDesigner plugin within SMODE. But first, what is TouchDesigner? It's a visual programming language that utilizes nodes, or as they refer to them, operators. We have different operator families, such as tops, chops, sops, etc. Each category representing a specific family. Tops are for 2D, chops represent signals, sop represent 3D, and so we'll be able to connect these different boxes together and achieve different interesting and generative results. This tutorial will assume that the user has basic TouchDesigner knowledge. However, we will quickly review the different steps required to create a custom tox file and how to import it. A quick note on the prerequisites needed to follow this tutorial. At bare minimum, you would need to have a SMODE Compose or SMODE Live license. On the TouchDesigner side, a license is required, be it educational, commercial or professional. You will not be able to follow this tutorial if you have the free licenses for SMODE or TouchDesigner. Following the logic of SMODE's layer system, we will be able to import two types of TouchDesigner components, also known as tox files. The first category are generators, akin to, for instance, a noise. And the second category are modifiers, similar to, for example, a displace. How is this represented in TouchDesigner? So here we have an example for a generator, and here we have an example for a modifier. The fundamental difference between a generator and a modifier is that the generator has no input image. It generates the image and only has an output, whereas the modifier has an input and an output as well. So now we'll create our tox file, and to do that we'll select the whole operator network, right click and collapse selected. This will create what's referred to as a base, which is a TouchDesigner component. And so now we're going to be interested in two windows. First of all, the parameters window, which will allow us to access and visualize our base's parameters. And the second window is the customize component, which will allow us to drag and drop specific operator parameters. So we can now access them from the base parameters level. So at this step of the process, we're just going to be looking for parameters that do interesting changes and drag and drop them within the customized component. So for example, this period parameter there is quite interesting. So don't forget to bind as master always. And so we can see here now within the base parameters that this period is now accessible. And if we play with the value, we can see that it changes at the base level, but also within the operator parameters of the noise within. In SMODE, we will only be able to access the parameters at the base level. And so now all we need to do is rinse and repeat the same process with every parameter we find interesting. So now I think we can disconnect the banana. And so as soon as we're satisfied with all of the tox parameters we've gathered, we can rename our files. And so we'll name this one gen for generator. And we'll name this one mod for modifier. It's important to note that when we created the binding between the operator's parameter and our base, our expression abstime.seconds was lost. Any expression that you have that has been exposed as a base parameter will be cut when imported in SMODE. But we'll also see that within SMODE there exists ways to reobtain this continuous movement. And so just to layer the point, I will rewrite the abstime.seconds expression within the parameter. So we'll be able to see what happens within SMODE. And so now I think we're good to save our tox files within our palette browser in a folder that I've named SMODE within the My Components section. So all we need to do now is drag and drop them within the folder. And so now we have our generator named noise orange and blue and our modifier spiral feedback. And so now I'll just reveal the folder with the Explorer. Back in SMODE, all I need to do is to drag and drop the folder containing the tox files within our media directory. So we can see that it contains our generator and our modifier. And now we'll be able to just drag and drop the TouchDesigner components and modify them like any other SMODE layer. I'll just take a quick moment to modify our composition's resolution since we were previously working with a square format. I'll just put 1000 times 1000, same as within TouchDesigner. So now I'll just drag and drop the generator within the composition. It'll take a little moment to load. And so our tox file has been correctly imported, but we notice that it isn't moving. There are two reasons for this. The first reason, and probably most apparent, is that our translate parameter had an expression, abs time.seconds, and here we can see that SMODE doesn't take these expressions into account. If we create an infinite ramp animation from SMODE, well, we notice that we still don't get any movement, despite having a player and a timer. And so this leads us to the second reason, which is when you import a tox file within SMODE, you must always activate the standalone player for the tox file, be it a generator or a modifier. This will allow the touch engine and SMODE's engine to synchronize. And so now we have our transform parameter going to +infinite, and I'll just slightly reduce its speed. And now we're just going to add our spiral feedback modifier as a modifier layer for our generator. And so as soon as we import the modifier, we could see this error message, which is a resolution mismatch. First and foremost, let's click on the play standalone. That should really be a habit when importing tox files into SMODE. And so this resolution mismatch error is due to the fact that our modifier contains a feedback loop within it. And so all we need to do now is click on the reset pulse of the feedback loop, and that should give us the proper resolution and get rid of the error message. So now that our tox files are correctly imported within SMODE and we can access their parameters within the parameter window, we can start playing with them. And for example, we can animate those parameters. We can add them to a timeline. I'll just make this timeline 15 seconds long. And for example, we could select the period parameter. And we can animate this layer like any other layer within SMODE. If ever you're experiencing difficulties while trying to import your tox files within SMODE, don't hesitate to refer to the SMODE documentation in the Troubleshooting Tox Import Issues section. Here we go over several best practices to import your TouchDesigner components within SMODE.